Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your host, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. We're closing in ever so closely now on the NBL Finals. Plenty to talk about. There's been plenty of news floating around in the NBL world this week. We've had the league handing out fines to owners and to superstar players. We've had, rumours circulating about the longest-serving coach in the league potentially finishing up in the next week or two. We've got 6 teams still technically fighting out for the finals race. I think it's realistically down to 5. And as we record this show, the New Zealand Breakers are making one hell of a run after their win over the Brisbane Bullets on Friday night. So let's get into it. We're here thanks to Hoops Heaven. Head to hoopsheaven.com.au to check out all of the basketball merchandise and shoes and everything you can ever imagine. But I'm Chris Pike, your co-host, but let's get straight into it. Shawn Redhage, the scoring machine. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Pikey. The New Zealand Breakers just keep proving me wrong, I tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might have been a little bit premature last week on the show when I talked about how I feel like if they make the playoffs, they can go all the way to win the championship. But now that they keep winning, they're knocking on the door of the top 4. And all of a sudden, if the Brisbane Bullets lose in Perth on Sunday this weekend, the Breakers will be in that 4th position, and it's almost their spot to lose. All they have to do is beat the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix next week, and they're pretty much locked away. What did you make of the game last night? Well,
New Zealand, they just keep finding a way to win. And they're playing through their superstars at the moment, especially Scotty Hopson, 31 points, 7 rebounds. And we talked about it a little bit of pregame show that 36 minutes for 4 players. They only had 1 player outside of their bench score. That was Brandon Ashley. Their import had 10 points. So their starters are getting the job done. And credit to that whole organization for the turnaround and what they've been able to produce. I mean, we talked about earlier in the show, we weren't sure about the culture and I guess the pieces they had there. But, they've got rid of a few guys and just found a way to win last night. It looked like Brisbane were in control at times, but, New Zealand kept it close and then just put the ball in their hands and their best player, Scotty Hopson, in the second half, and he delivered.
Yeah, you're right. Watching the game, the Bullets broke away to some handy leads, and it looked like they were going to be able to pull away. And Lamar Patterson didn't have a huge game because he was in foul trouble for a lot of it, but Nathan Sobey stepped up huge and had probably his best game of the season with the Bullets. They just looked like, with the home court behind them, they were going to be able to pull away, and they got off to a 10-0 start to open the game too, so they started on fire. The Breakers looked a little bit shaky early. They had some turnovers, and the pressure the Bullets were putting on them was working, especially when they don't have a genuine point guard. They've got Scotty Hopson and Sek Henry running things for them, especially now that Jared Weeks is out at the moment with his sore shoulder. But yeah, the Breakers, just every time the Bullets threatened to break away, they would be able to pull back into the game to get it close. And then even when Patterson hit that big 3 late, which I think put the Bullets up 5, the Breakers just come right back down the other end and answer. Scotty Hopson hit those big shots every time he needed to. And then on the last play, he found Finn Delaney inside. Finn Delaney had a strong finish, and that was pretty much the game. Every time they had to find something, they found something, and they've just got guys stepping up to make huge plays right now.
Well, it's going to make this last week of the season extremely interesting, and you just got a feeling it's going to come down to that percentage. And Those teams are right neck and neck. I think at the moment, New Zealand's got about a 10-point difference percentage-wise. So these last couple games for Brisbane, if they lose, they want to make sure it's a close one, and they're going to have to try and find one of these wins from their final games as well. So it's, you're right. I think New Zealand is in the driver's seat in the fact that they've got to play Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. That's their only game. And if they can get to that, then it gives them a great chance of getting to the finals, especially they've got the percentage as well. So they're going to have to be prepared to try and run the score up against Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, and they'll be rooting for the Wildcats against Brisbane as well on Sunday.
Now, assuming New Zealand does win that game against the Phoenix next week, it pretty much means the Bullets have to not only win in Perth on Sunday this week, but they also have to beat the Cairns Taipans in Brisbane next Saturday as well, because as you just touched on, the Breakers are just ahead on percentage, and they'll be hoping that they can run up that percentage a little bit more against the Phoenix as well. So assuming the Breakers still end up on a higher percentage. Assuming that they win next week against the Phoenix, they'll end up 15-13. So that means the Bullets will have to win both of these two games. They're playing the second and third team on the ladder. One of them's at home, I know, but can they do it? Is this Brisbane team capable?
Well, I think it's going to come down to that Cairns game. I think it's going to be tough for them to beat the Wildcats. We've seen it before that the Wildcats have had a couple shocking home losses this year, but heading into the finals, I think they'll be pretty switched on. So I expect them to get that one. To me, Cairns is also the interesting one because they got 3 games on the road now. Mm-hmm. They've got to finish the season at Adelaide, at Melbourne, and then at Brisbane. So none of those games you're going to chalk up as a win, especially with the news out of Adelaide this week as well. So it's, you could conceivably see a thing where Cairns misses out on the finals as well. If we got 3 teams at 15-13, considering percentage, they could be out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my next question. Do you think the Taipans get one of those last 3 games? They have to just win one of those last 3 to make it, but they're going to be tough. Like you said, this Adelaide game now tonight is really tough because there's going to be a lot of emotion in that building in Adelaide. And then to finish at Melbourne, Melbourne still might be an outside chance to make the playoffs if they win that game on Thursday, and then they head to Brisbane, where Brisbane might just have to win for their lives as well. Do the Taipans get one of these 3?
Well, you could almost see 4 teams at 15-13, actually, with United as well sneaking in there. They've got a pretty good run home playing Illawarra, and then obviously the Taipans, they play against them, and then the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So it's a good run home for the United. So imagine if we have 4 teams at 15-13, the percentage. I mean, at the moment, Cairns has the best percentage, but if they lose 3 straight, that changes that dramatically. So
you're right.
I don't know if we've ever seen 4 teams for those final 2 spots and it being so close. It's going to be an exciting race to the finish. And if you're the owner of the NBL, you're excited. Larry Kesselman has to be like the fact that it's so close. They're, as great a talented team as Sydney Kings are, it's not like they've run away with this competition, and just shows the depth and the players that we have in this league.
Well, especially because as the stakes rise, the quality of play rises as well. That game last night in Brisbane was a playoff type game in every way you can imagine, and it ended up going right down to the wire. If you have a look at this game in Adelaide tonight, Adelaide and Cairns, you'd expect that to be a pretty exciting game. You have a look at tomorrow and the game in Perth and the Brisbane Bullets is going to be fantastic as well. And we've got huge games next week as well, starting with Melbourne and Cairns on the Thursday. It's an exciting way to finish the season with pretty much the playoffs have already started for those 4 teams fighting for those spots.
Yeah, it has. That's exactly what you want, and as a fan, this is exciting time of year, and I love it, and it just shows the strength of the league. We added another team in the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, but it hasn't diluted the talent, and we're getting some fantastic product out there in the NBL.
Now, there was plenty happening last week across the league. There's plenty for us to dissect. I'll quickly run through the results, and then we'll get into some of the newsy points of it. Last week's show, we had already dissected Melbourne United's Wednesday night win over the Perth Wildcats. Then on Friday, it was the New Zealand Breakers' big winners over the Adelaide 36ers in their last home game at Spark Arena for the season, 113-89. Cairns Taipans also beating the Illawarra Hawks in their last home game of the season, 99-75, and it was only fitting, I guess, days after the horrible tragedy with Kobe Bryant that both of those teams won by 24 points. It's just amazing how these things work out sometimes. Then Saturday, a huge game. The playoffs started pretty much with this game in Brisbane. The Brisbane Bullets held out Melbourne United to win 87-83. Then the Perth Wildcats, really, really strong win. They played well, even if the Sydney Kings came without Andrew Bogut and Craig Moller still not here, and Didi Lazada, but Kevin Lish did come back. So it was an important win for the Wildcats, 110-100 over the Kings. And then let's start with this game, Shawn. New Zealand Breakers beat the Illawarra Hawks 65-52, but the game didn't finish. We had 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. We had heavy rain falling in Wollongong. It managed to come through the roof and it was creating quite a little puddle at one part of the floor, and it wasn't going to stop, and the game had to be called off. And that's the way it was. The result ended up standing, which I think was the right result. But let's start with the most obvious thing. If it was going to happen anywhere in the league, unfortunately, it's probably that building in Wollongong right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that a game gets marred like that. Obviously, if you get it past halftime, the rules are that the game can be completed and called a complete game. Yeah, that stadium's probably in need of repair and probably not up to the level of the other stadiums that around the league at the moment. You see Adelaide moving into their new stadium and it looks fantastic. Obviously Melbourne and Southeast Melbourne, Phoenix playing in some good arenas. Sydney Kings have moved out to Homebush and playing the Olympics. So everyone's kind of taken that step up. New Zealand Breakers went to the Spark Arena a number of years ago and just improved their quality. So you just got to look at that arena, and is it time for them to upgrade that? I think when you start getting leaks in the roof, it probably tells you that the case. And hopefully, if there's any good thing that comes out of it, maybe it brings some attention to that. Let's get a proper NBL arena there at Illawarra if the town is going to support it. So we know there's some issues there between the owner and the league and possibly a change of hands. So I think there's going to be a lot of talk and discussion in Illawarra about the future of that club and where it's headed in the NBL, because it does feel like they're a little bit of a step behind, not only on the court, but off the court in terms of the facilities and what they're able to provide.
Well, this might be the breaking point where the league actually says to the club and says to, I guess, the region of Illawarra that if you want to still have an NBL club, then you have to upgrade your stadium. We've seen in the NBA before that the NBA's made a stand where if City's not willing to build a new stadium like in Seattle, then you lose your franchise. So maybe the league just gives them an ultimatum. You either upgrade your stadium and get things in order to make yourselves more competitive and build yourselves up more and do everything you can to get more people to your games as well, or maybe you just lose your franchise altogether.
Well, it's a tough one too. It's a catch-22 because the stadium's probably thinking, well, we need to sell this stadium out. We've got to need to know that the Hawks are going to be here if we're going to spend all this money to upgrade it. So maybe there's some negotiating that has to happen there. But when I came into the league 2005, Illawarra was probably the toughest place. I would say Illawarra and Townsville were the toughest places to play in the league. And obviously Townsville's not in the league anymore. So I'm a little surprised that the smaller towns don't really get behind, a big time professional league like the NBL in their town. It's, hopefully, we've been talking about for a number of years, but hopefully the town there really steps up and says, let's back this team. Let's sell it out, because they could make that a fortress. If they sold out, it's not the nicest arena in the league, but if they sold that place out, it would be a tough place to play. But currently that's not the case.
Yeah, I still remember when we went there in that 2010 Grand Final series. That was the most hostile and loud crowd I've almost ever been part of. And they sold that out, 5,000 people there, and I'm just not sure what's gone wrong in the 10 years since, but let's hope that they do get it together. In terms of the result, do you think the league made the right decision in deciding that the result at the time that the game had to be stopped, that stood? Is that the right decision?
Well, it's probably the right decision, but for a basketball purist, is there no other basketball stadiums in Illawarra? Could they just, they've got cars, they've got buses, let's go run over here where the refs are here. Let's just finish these last 13 minutes. Maybe we don't have the fans. Get over to the old snake pit. And let's actually finish this game the right way. So I know that's probably a hard one to do, but I'm sure there's some rules and regulations that need to be put in place. But maybe in the future, hey, there's tons of basketball stadiums in every city across this country. So maybe we just skip over there and play it out. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that would be allowed. That's the first time I've seen a regular season game. I played in a few preseason games over in Puerto Rico where the roofs were gushing through and they had to call the game. But an actual regular season game being called for water on the floor is roof leak. That's the first time I've seen it. Yeah,
me too. I guess the thing with it is, I guess because the Illawarra Hawks, their season's over, I guess that there was no point for them to bother fighting the decision, because they have nothing to really gain. I mean, what's the difference between winning 5 or 6 games for a season when you come down to it? But if this was a different opponent, let's say this was last night's game where it was Brisbane that was behind and they had to win this game, and with 30 minutes to go, you're only 13 points down. 3 minutes before that, you're only 6 points behind. Would you fight this decision? Would you try to find a way to get the game restarted somewhere? Or if the game actually meant something for the team behind, what would you try to make happen?
Well, I think probably logically, maybe the next day, let's get together and let's play this game out from that point. I think you need to reward the team that was up. I don't think you should be completely, unless it was before halftime, maybe you play the whole game out. But you're only 13 minutes left in the game. Let's maybe a different venue if you're worried about the leak again. But let's play that out. And I think maybe I think that might have been the case if it had a lot more playoff implications. But it could actually have those playoff implications, considering it could come down to percentage if New Zealand get this last win. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But if you're a league as well, you've got to probably come up with some. I know there are things in place for something like this, but maybe just revisit that in the off season and say if this happens again, what's going to be the solution.
Yeah, I think so too. That makes a lot of sense. But it was certainly a dramatic way to finish the round, but there was plenty of other things to talk about as well. And we had the NBL handing out a couple of fines. The Indigenous round right across the league was a fantastic success. I don't think you can look at it any other way. It was a tremendous show of respect to Indigenous culture, and I think every club did a great job of it. In some ways, it was marred by the comments by Paul Smith, the Sydney Kings owner, and certainly if you look at the statement that the Wildcats put out, the club felt like it was somewhat tarnished by his comments, calling into question, I guess, the design that the Wildcats used and hinting that they were using it to promote other things other than the Indigenous culture, which I think was a ridiculous comment to start with. Did it in any way tarnish the Indigenous round, or what did you make of the whole situation?
Well, I think Paul's probably regretting the tweet that he had, just talking about the Wildcats using that the Indigenous round to promote their 33 finals appearances and 9 championships. And I thought the one thing I liked about the Indigenous round was each team's jersey had a story behind it.
For sure.
And I haven't seen that before in others, where an actual story, and I think that's awesome. You want to look at a jersey and say, all right, how did they come up with this design? And I really liked it. I mean, I thought it was creative, and he sounded like Paul was a little upset at the halftime. They talked a couple minutes about the Wildcats jersey and how they came up with the design, and I thought it was a classy jersey. I really liked the design, and I like the fact that there's a story behind it. And to me, the Indigenous culture, there's so many stories with a lot of the things in their culture as well. So I know I've gone out to some Indigenous communities and done some basketball clinics, and they'll tell me some stories behind certain things in their community, and so stories is a big part of it. So I'm not sure that Paul really understood what he was tweeting in that, and I think it's disappointing from the league's point of view and the Wildcats' point of view. And I think that they made appropriate calls and punishments as well.
I think so too. I think well done for not letting him get away with it, because I just thought it was uncalled for. I think for an owner, it's okay to have your opinions, but I think to criticise something like that was just wide of the mark. The other fine they handed out went to Mitch Creek when he was back in Adelaide playing on Saturday night, and he got into it with the owner of the 36ers and had some words to say. I think it's fair to say that Mitch Creek won't be going back to the 36ers anytime soon.
Yeah, well, he didn't leave, and there was a lot of things happened when he did leave the 36ers, obviously getting the NBA contract, and they didn't want to release him, and there was all this issue, and it's disappointing, because you just kind of felt like when Mitch Creek was there, he really enjoyed the Adelaide community. They got behind him. He just he really promoted it well. So for me, it's a bit disappointing on both sides, because I felt like the fans loved Mitch Creek, and I think everyone loved the way he played. He was the fans' MVP that year, his last season in Adelaide. So it's there's some things going on there. Adelaide don't seem to everyone being gelling at the moment.
No, that leads us into the next topic as well. Joey Wright, He's about to coach his 500th NBL game when he comes to Perth for Adelaide's last game of the season next week. But it looks like it's going to be his last game coaching Adelaide as well. Body Nodge had the exclusive report, and I would suggest that his news only came from one source, and that's most likely coming straight from Joey. It's interesting timing. You can have a look at the way that this 36ers team has gone this year, and clearly there's chemistry issues. And if you read between the lines, I don't think that the connection between the playing group and the coach has been that strong. You have a look at the frustrations that Joey's showing, and even some of the things that he said post-match recently, including saying that they haven't got as good Australian talent as the rest of the league, and that they're clearly missing Ramon Moore, when there's certainly question marks to be asked about the whole Ramon Moore situation. That's probably a discussion for another day, but it looks like Adelaide and Joey Wright have fallen out of love with each other. Is that the way you read it? Would you expect these last 2 games of the season to be his last in charge of the 36ers?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact ends, and we haven't heard confirmation from Joey Wright or the 36ers, but I'd suggest that, if there's a guy that knows the ends of Adelaide basketball, it's probably Bodie. So, and it makes sense if you look at it from what's happened over the last couple of years. I think there's been some issues there with Nathan Sobey, leaving, and some of those best players that kind of helped them get to the grand final kind of left there. And I'm not sure the whole reasons behind that, but there seems to be a lot of animosity there between possibly the coach and the ownership group. And we know Van Groningen's come over there now to be a part of that. And so, whenever you add a new GM and that, they've got different ideas, and maybe it's time for Joey to go another way. And possibly it could just be a little bit burned out. I mean, 7 straight years at the helm of an NBL club, and I think he's done a fantastic job. They weren't even sniffing to get into the NBL finals his first year. They got into the NBL finals there. Obviously lost to the Wildcats, and then 2 years ago, I thought if Josh Childress hadn't gotten hurt in that grand final series, they were going to get that one. I was covering all those games, and I just felt like Childress was the difference maker, and it unfortunately got that shoulder injury in the grand final. Or you're probably talking about the Adelaide 36ers having another championship banner up there. So that's the difference sometimes. I mean, you got the coach, you've got good enough players, but an injury can be the difference. So, if this is his last game, I think Joey can, hold his head up high for what he's been able to do at Adelaide, and the players been able to produce has been outstanding.
You would have played a lot of games against teams coached by Joey Wright. If I did the numbers, it's probably, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 games, given he was coaching the Bullets when you started, then he went to the Gold Coast Blaze, and now he's been in Adelaide as well. What was it like playing against teams coached by Joey Wright, and did you ever have any sort of a run-in with him?
Oh, look, Joey's teams, I mean, they're just probably similar to the way Adelaide, back in the Gold Coast, they were going to get up and run and gun and try and outscore you. I guess from a player's point of view, that's the way you want to play. He was always intense on that sideline. Seemed to maybe have a couple guys where he was a little bit more intense with than others. But the one thing I thought Joey he knew how to kind of get the best out of his team. He knew how to kind of pull those, whether if they were struggling and had a bad game, had them up at training the next day. You hear stories, or some of the epic sprays that I heard walking by the change rooms, either at halftime or after a game, if things hadn't gone their way. You could just see he knew how to, I guess, pull those strings to get the best out of his team. And it was always a tough beat against those guys. I think he had, obviously that team he had in Brisbane, I still say was the probably the most talented team, and probably the best team I ever played against in my NBL career, when they had Sam McKinnon, CJ Bruton, Ebby Ari. They just had an outstanding lineup, and they knew how to play together, and almost unbeatable. I think they went 20 straight wins. So credit to him for a lot of success in this league, and 500 games in the NBL as a head coach. He must be doing something right.
Now, it looks like his 500th game will be his last of the 36ers, and it'll be in Perth, and it'll be with you with the microphone in hand when you have to talk to him at some point during the afternoon. Will you put the question to him if it hasn't, in fact, been confirmed by that point, or how are you going to approach talking to him next week?
Well, that will be interesting. We'll have to. That's a little bit of a delicate one. Maybe we'll hear more of it coming out this week. I'm sure there might be some press conferences after their game against Cairns, as this is kind of the first time it's been reported. So, I think the fans want to know what's happening in Adelaide. Most likely they're not going to make the finals, so you're probably going to have to ask that question. Now, we know Joey's not always the most outright in giving away things, especially to reporters at halftime. So it'll obviously at the right time, we'll see if we can find out those answers.
Probably your first big test as a sideline reporter to put a hard question to somebody. So we'll see how you go. Another thing I wanted to get some thoughts on: the league released their award nominees this week as well. We'll have the award winners announced in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's during the FIBA window when that'll be held. In a couple of weeks, we'll give our award winners as well and what we think. We've done that at the start of the season. We did it at the midway point of the season as well. So for now, I want to go through each award and just get our top three candidates for each award, if you can bear with me, Shawn. So let's start with the MVP award. Do you see anybody except Bryce Cotton, Scott Machado, and Lamar Patterson being genuine candidates for that?
No, I think you just throw those three in there. I mean, obviously Scotty Hopson, but I'm just not sure he's played enough games with the injury.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of that, I don't think there's anyone else that could probably get it. Obviously Bogut's been injured, just hadn't had the impact that he had last year as well.
I'll just run through the nominees: Andrew Bogut, Bryce Cotton, Cam Oliver, Casper Ware, Daniel Johnson, DJ Newell, Jerome Randall, John Roberson, Jay Sean Tate, Lamar Patterson, Mitch Creek, Nick Kay, Scotty Hobson, Sean Long, and Scott Machado. Does anyone surprise you that's on that list or that isn't on that list?
No, not that's not on the list. The one outside chance I would say would be Jay Sean Tate. He's probably the most surprising. That's in that surprising from the start of the season, and not the way he's played. I think he belongs in that. And the way Sydney's playing, I think he's been a catalyst to a lot of the stuff that they've been able to get done this year and the success that they've had. Yeah,
and I think he definitely belongs all NBL first team as well as the power forward. So we'll see how that plays out. A couple of ones that are very tough to pick. These next two: most improved player. I know when we did our mid-season picks, it was really tough to narrow it down to an option. The nominees are Anthony Dremick, Dane Pino, Majuk Deng, Mirko Jeric, Sean Bruce, Sunday Desh, and Will Magnay. We won't pick our winner just yet, but who's the top three from that stands out?
Jeez, I reckon you almost got to go with the top.
I think you're right.
Obviously, the way he's played. Magnay's been outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday Detch. I just think that there's and obviously Sean Bruce. So I would throw those four, and you got a feeling it'll come probably between Magnay and Pino, but I think that those other guys have definitely have a case to be had for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the other one that's tough, the best six man. We'll go through the list: Brandon Ashley, Clint Steindl, Daniel Kickett, Eric Griffin, Jason Kadee, Kyle Adnam, Mirko Jeric, but with an asterisk. I think if he keeps starting as he has been, then I think he becomes ineligible. Nate Jarwhite, Sean Bruce, and Will Magnay.
I can't pick that one. And this is just me, my personal opinion. Let's throw the imports out because I don't think I don't know. I just it's never sat well with me when the import is your sixth man, and they get odd. That's not that I don't know. Everyone doesn't believe that. But that's just my personal theory on that.
And in fairness, I think Eric Griffin's probably been too inconsistent to win it anyway, and maybe Brandon Ashley has been in foul trouble too much anyway to be a genuine candidate anyway. So let's chuck those two out.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Bruce has been really good. Steindl at times has been outstanding for the Wildcats. I think Nate Jawaz, provided probably he doesn't play as many minutes as some of the others. So, that's a tough one. And Kadee, he's hit or miss, but probably his consistency will hurt him a little bit there. But, he's been outstanding in some games for Brisbane. So, and Will Magnay, he was on the bench for a lot, but now he's kind of started since they kind of made that run. So, is he still eligible? I don't know if he starts the rest of the games. We'll see that as well.
Yeah, that's probably the toughest one out of them all to tip. So it'll be fascinating to see who wins it. One that I don't think is tough to tip. I think there's one standout candidate, but we'll go for a top three for now. Defensive Player of the Year on the list is Andrew Bogut, Cam Oliver, Casper Ware, Dane Pinot, DJ Newble, Mitch McCarron, Sunday Desch, and Will Magnay. Who are the top three that stand out to you?
Well, I really like Magnay, what he's doing on the defensive end. I think DJ Newble.
My only question mark is, has he done it long enough? Has he only done it in the last month, or has he been strong defensively all season?
Yeah, it's a good point. I really like the way DJ Newble's played on the defensive end. Bogut, I mean, you got to throw him in there. Mm-hmm. Did they say Tate? Is Tate in there as well? No. See, I really like Tate as a defender. So, and who's your pick? I'm interested to see because I don't think it's as clear cut as you think.
DJ Newble has been the standout defender this season. I think he's locked down all of the best offensive weapons from a guard point of view at the Taipans, and I just think he's been massively important for everything that they've done up in Cairns. So I think he's been the standout. No Perth Wildcats player nominated. I think we both thought that Damien Martin was still well and truly in the mix at the halfway point. He obviously hasn't played since then, so he's fallen out of the mix. The Wildcats were disappointed. Trevor Gleeson came out and talked about that during the week. They at least didn't have somebody nominated. But realistically, did they have anybody that should be in the mix? Nobody stands out to me.
I like Nick Kay as a defender, and maybe we're being bossed because we get to see him on a weekly basis there, but he's just always in the right position and just good hands, good defender, good, he's strong-bodied, good rebounder. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't get a ton of steals. He's up there in the amount of steals. I just think position-wise, he's one of the better defenders. And obviously Bryce Cotton, I think his defense is underrated. He's leading the league in steals, and to me, that's tough to do when you're also the best offensive player in the competition as well. So sometimes you put a lot of energy to be able to come off screens and get up there. But credit to him, he still puts in works, and not in a way that puts your team at a disadvantage. Allen Iverson used to lead the NBA in steals, but I never thought he was a fantastic defender. He would gamble a lot, whereas I think Bryce is pretty smart with that. So maybe I'm not sure he would win the award, but I can see where one of those, I still think Damian Martin, when he's healthy, is the best on-ball defender in the league and does the most from a defensive presence point of view. But I still would have maybe had Bryce Cotton or Nick Kay at least nominated.
Last one, Coach of the Year. Let's just assume all 9 coaches are nominated. To me, if I went for a top 3, it's probably Will Weaver, Mike Kelly, and then whoever ends up making the top 4, whether it's Dan Shamir or Andre Lamans. I think if whichever of those two end up making the playoffs, they would have done a terrific job. I'm not sure if we can wait to find that out or not, but to me, that would be the top 3. Is there anyone I've missed?
No, I mean, I think Trevor Gleeson gets done hard done by just being the Wildcats coach and what they expect. But this year, I don't think it's not even going to be close. I think Mike Kelly wins that one hands down, unless there's a collapse with the Cairns Taipans toward the end of the year.
If they miss out,
what he's been able to do, they only won 5 games last year, and he turned it around. So credit to him. I think that one will be a shoo-in.
I think so too. I just think Will Weaver deserves credit as well. It's not always easy to coach a team full of superstars. In some ways, it's probably harder to coach a team full of players with big egos and big pay packets than it is to coach a team that's less caliber and got less superstars in it. So I think the way he's been able to pull the Sydney Kings together to get them play as a team, to get them playing so well defensively, and to be on top of the ladder for every round of the season, I think deserves a lot of credit. So I think he can't be discredited, but I'm like you. I think Mike taking a team from first into the playoffs and to make them from a team that was way off the mark last year to now a team that's beaten everybody in the competition. I think he clearly the standout and hopefully will take it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about Will Weaver as well. I mean, the Sydney Kings, they had Andrew Gaze, the greatest Australian basketballer ever, coaching them last year, and then they brought in Will Weaver, and with a similar lineup, obviously made that change at point guard, which I think has been good, and obviously Didi Lozada coming in, but pretty similar players and skill packet. but they've, he's done a great job with them. And, you're right. I think most years he'd probably done enough to get it, but just the way Mike Kelly's been able to change that team and the culture over the last 12 months gets him the award.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, that's a breakdown on at least who's eligible to win the awards. Once the season finishes next week, we'll have a show and we'll discuss on who we think is the actual award winners as well, and see how it compares to what we thought at the start of the season and what we thought at the midway point as well, because I dare say it'll be a fair bit different. So we'll keep you informed on that. So let's keep moving, Shawn, and we're of course here thanks to Hoops Heaven. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, head to hoopsheaven.com.au and use the very special code word HUSTLE, and you'll get a terrific thanks to our great partners at Hoops Heaven. So check them out on their website, or indeed if you're in Perth, check out the store in person at Murray Street, and they'll take care of you there. So thanks again to the team at Hoops Heaven for making this show possible once again, Shawn. And let's move into our preview. So we've got 4 more games across the rest of this weekend, starting on Saturday with Melbourne United, the Illawarra Hawks. First home game for a while, I guess, at least with the roof open for Melbourne now that the Australian Open's finished. If they want to stay any chance of the playoffs, they just have to win this game, and because of how important percentage is, they have to win by a pretty big margin too, you would think.
Yeah, I think Melbourne United are going to come out, and the way they, Illawarra Hawks have been struggling a little bit. They're just looking at the odds. Melbourne United's a $1.08 favorite, so I think they're pretty well backed there to get the job done. I expect a big win from Melbourne United.
Then we've got the Adelaide 36ers and the Cairns Taipans. As we talked about at the top of the show, the Taipans have to win one more game. This is probably their best chance out of the 3, you would suggest. But yeah, with all the emotion floating around in Adelaide, with what's happening with Joey Wright, the fact that it's their last home game, it's always tough to beat a team on their home floor when they're playing their last home game, because they want to send off their home fans for the season on a good note. This one's really tough to tip.
This one is, you're right. I just think Adelaide, I know them at home. I know Joey Wright's going to get them ready for their last home game of the year. And just with the news coming out, I think the team is going to really want to play for Joey Wright and kind of send him out, if that's the case, on a high, especially in front of the Adelaide faithful. So it's a big game for Cairns. You're right. I think that's the one they've got to try and get. It's probably going to be the easiest one, but I expect Adelaide to get this one.
No, I think I agree. I just think with all the emotion going around that the 36ers play great when they are full of emotion like that. So I think they're going to come out and finish their home season on a high. They then very well could come out and put in a stinker next week in Perth, but I think they'll at least put in a good performance for this one. Then on Sunday, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix hosting the Sydney Kings. Not a whole lot to play for the Kings, given top spot's pretty much guaranteed, but they'll want to get Andrew Bogut back in the lineup, potentially Didi Lozada, and they'll want to just keep their winning form going and bounce back from that loss in Perth last week. Yeah,
well, they'll probably want to get more minutes for Kevin Lish as well. He only played 8 minutes, hit the game-opening bucket against the Wildcats, but we didn't see him much after that. So it's a big couple weeks for Sydney Kings, because you want to be playing good basketball. You want to be gelled with all your players. They're starting to get them all healthy. And they're gonna want a good performance there against the Phoenix, who just been a tough second half of the season after such a hot start. So I wouldn't put it past the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix to really challenge in this one, because they got that capability, especially with Roberson coming off and shooting the 3, and we know that the bigs from the Sydney Kings don't really like to get out there and show. Bryce Cotton has had a field day against them. So whenever you got a shooter, if Roberson can go for 30 and hit a lot of threes, it would give them a chance. But I expect Sydney Kings to get this one.
Mm-hmm. Last up, this is a massive game for both clubs. Perth Wildcats hosting the Brisbane Bullets. The Wildcats, they still need to win one of their last 2 games to make sure that they finish at least in second. I guess if they win their last 2 and Sydney lose their last 2, they can still even finish on top. So they need to keep their winning form going, and good news as well with it looking like Damien Martin will be back in the lineup for his first game back from his injury as well. So that's a nice bonus, and probably bad news for Nathan Sobey and Jason Cadegan, the guards at the Bullets. But yeah, for Brisbane, now that they lost that game on Friday night, this becomes a must-win game for them, because they don't want to have to put the pressure on winning that game next week against Cairns. If they can take care of business for this game in Perth, then it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Well, we've seen Brisbane actually get a couple games here in Perth over the last couple of years, so
yeah, we have.
They're capable of that. I just think the game on Friday night would have had a lot of emotion to that. It's going to be they're going to have to get off to a good start in that one to be able to compete. And we saw the Wildcats last week fall down 10-11-2 before Trevor Gleeson called that timeout and got his troops going. So I don't expect the Wildcats to be asleep at the start of this one. And they're going to want to try and get a big win as well. You know, it could come down to percentages if the Sydney Kings, I don't think they'll lose one of these games, but it's going to be interesting to see this last week how these teams play the percentage thing as well. So I'm excited. I'll be courtside for the for this one, and I'm excited to be back courtside and being a part of it.
I wanted to ask you about that. It's been a long time since you've done a game courtside. Do you remember what to do?
Yeah, it has. You know, I think it's been before Christmas. So just the way the schedule worked with Lockie and I was supposed to do the Australia Day weekend one, but I was away coaching, so we swapped on that one. So yeah, I'm excited. I miss being sideline and courtside, and hopefully it's a good game. I think two teams with a lot riding should be played at a high level.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Plenty to talk about. It's always good to do it mid-round, so we can dissect the Friday night game, and there was no better game probably so far this season for us to look back on than that Brisbane Bullets New Zealand Breakers game last night, especially with what was riding on it. And now we've got 4 more big games that we've previewed for the rest of the round. So been another good show, Shawn. Thanks for joining me again, and thanks for making it happen to Hoops Heaven. Head to hoopsheaven.com.au and use that code word HUSTLE and you'll get a special discount. Also, thank you to the support of ID Athletic, who are a tremendous apparel provider for all of your basketball uniforms. So head to idathletic.com for more information from them and certainly check them out. And they come highly recommended because they outfit Redhage basketball and your team, Shawn, very well. And of course, Devlin's for all of your items you can ever want for the men in your life, or if you want to go and treat yourself to something, whether it's anything from a cigar to a tie, to a bow tie, to a shot glass, to a ring, to whatever you can imagine that wants to make you feel a bit better about yourself. Head into Devlin's in Subiaco or at devlinsonline.com.au. But another big show, Shawn. Thanks again for joining me. Hopefully everybody enjoyed listening to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle once more. What can you leave us with for this week?
Oh, thanks, Pike. Yeah, I'm just looking forward. It's going to be interesting to see how these teams play out these games with the percentage. Obviously, the NBL changed the rule a few years ago, so it's going to come down to this. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week.
Bye, have a great time.